What you are watching is a historical moment in modern warfare. The air bases of a nuclear-armed nation struck, damaged and rendered non-operational by India. In 88 hours, India rewrote the rules of engagement in South Asia. This is the story of Operation Sindoor, a story of 22 days that changed everything. I'm Akshay Dongre and this is Operation Sindoor, India does not forget. It was an April afternoon in Basaran Valley, 2,700 meters above sea level, drenched by pine forest, alive with the laughter of tourists. At 1 p.m., that laughter was cut down by the sound of automatic fire. Armed with M4 carbines and AK-47s, 4 terrorists emerged from the tree line. They moved through the crowd with the method that had nothing to do with chance. They separated men from women. They asked each man one question, his religion. Those who could not recite a Quranic verse were shot at point-blank range, in front of their wives, their children, their families.
साइड में था एक इंसान आया उसने उसको गोली मार दी
यहाँ पे
उसने बोला कि शायद मुस्लिम नहीं है उसने उसको गोली मार दी
कौन मार दिया मेरे लाल को
26 people were killed, mostly Hindu tourists. One of them was also Adil Shah, a local Muslim pony ride operator who tried to intervene. This was not a random act of terror. It was the most carefully designed provocation India had seen since Mumbai 2008, a blueprint to fracture India from within. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who was in Saudi Arabia for an official visit, issued a stern warning stating, "Those behind this heinous act will not be spared and will be brought to justice. Their evil agenda will never succeed. Our resolve to fight terrorism is unshakable and it will get even stronger."
जम्मू कश्मीर के पहलगाम में आतंकियों ने मासूम देशवासियों को जिस बेरहमी से मारा है उससे पूरा देश व्यथित है। कोटि कोटि देशवासी दुखी हैं। मैं बहुत स्पष्ट शब्दों में कहना चाहता हूं, जिन्होंने ये हमला किया है उन आतंकियों को और इस हमले की साजिश रचने वालों को उनकी कल्पना से भी बड़ी सजा मिलेगी।
The name Operation Sindoor came later. Sindoor is the red vermilion that married Hindu women wear. That operation named for the women who were widowed that afternoon on that mountain, whose Sindoor, in the Prime Minister's own words, was wiped away. The intent behind the attack was clear to the intelligence agencies of India almost immediately. This was not a random strike, it was designed to provoke, to separate communities, to make Kashmir feel dangerous again, just as it was recovering. What followed was 15 days of preparation and then a response that nobody in the region had quite anticipated. The Resistance Front, TRF, a proxy of the UN-designated terror outfit Lashkar-e-Taiba, claimed responsibility. Within hours, Pakistan's security establishment now clearly felt the heat and TRF later brazenly withdrew its claim the next day, calling it a cyber intrusion, and the world was in fool, and neither was New Delhi. Within 24 hours of the attack, the Cabinet Committee on Security, chaired by Prime Minister Modi, approved a 5-point action plan, which was swift, surgical and diplomatic. The Indus Water Treaty, in force since 1960, was suspended. The Atari Wagah border, the last symbol of people-to-people contact, was shut down. Pakistan's military advisors were told to leave. The SARC visa exemption scheme for Pakistani nationals was also revoked, and Indian diplomatic staff in Islamabad was cut down from 55 to just 30. Pakistan tried to retaliate diplomatically, suspending the Simla agreement, closing its airspace to Indian aircraft, expelling Indian diplomats, and then, along the line of control, the first sound of something beyond diplomacy: skirmishes, shells, probing fire. India's move on the Baglihar Dam, closing the Chenab's flow into Pakistan, was no accident. Simultaneously, the Ministry of Home Affairs announced civil defense drills across 7 states. Air raid sirens, blackout exercises, the first such drills since 1971. India was not signaling anymore. India was preparing. At 1:04 in the morning on the 7th of May, India launched Operation Sindoor. The operation lasted only 23 minutes. 9 terror sites struck simultaneously across Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Jaish-e-Mohammed's headquarters in Bahawalpur, a city 400 km inside Pakistan. Lashkar-e-Taiba's main training complex in Muridke. Hizbul Mujahideen's infrastructure in POK, the universities of global terrorism reduced to rubble. Scalp cruise missiles, Hammer precision-guided bombs, BrahMos, indigenous Akash system, Sky Striker drones. This was not just a surgical strike. This was a declaration of a new India. Over 100 terrorists were killed. Among the dead were Yusuf Azhar, Abdul Malik Rauf, and Mudassir Ahmad, planners of the IC-814 hijacking, the Parliament attack, Pulwama attack. 3 decades of impunity ended within minutes. Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Maulana Masood Azhar himself confirmed that 10 members of his own family and 4 aides were killed in Bahawalpur. A day after the attacks, Pakistan exposed itself internationally once again, as its top military commanders attended the funeral process of the slain terrorists.
This person here is a sanctioned terrorist under the American sanctions regime. His name is Hafiz Abdur Rauf. He's the brother of the founder of the terrorist groups that you're mentioning. Look who's behind him. Pakistani military. Look at the coffins there. They have the Pakistani national flag.
At the same time, Pakistan also launched a propaganda warfare to gather sympathy at the world stage, which was countered by the Indian officials at war footing to expose the nefarious designs of Pakistan's terror infrastructure.
The whole world has heard Pakistan's Defense Minister Khwaja Asif admitting and confessing Pakistan's history of supporting, training and funding terrorist organizations in a recent television interview. This open confession surprises no one and exposes Pakistan as a rogue state fueling global terrorism and destabilizing the region. The world can no longer turn a blind eye.
Pakistan could not absorb the blow silently. By the morning of May 7, Pakistani artillery began bombarding Poonch and Jammu. The targets chosen were not military. They were the Shambhu Temple in Jammu, a Gurudwara in Poonch, Christian convents. Pakistan's calculation was ruthless. If they could ignite communal violence inside India, they could win the information warfare, even as they lost the military one. They failed once again, and by May 8th, the conflict entered a dimension that neither side had seen ever before in terms of drone warfare. Swarms of Pakistani UAVs targeting Indian forward positions in Kupwara and Poonch. India's Akash Tir integrated air defense system intercepting them in waves. The drone strategy of Pakistan completely failed, decimated and demolished by India's superior and impregnable air defense systems, and then came May 10th. At 2 a.m., Pakistan tried to attack Adampur Air Base. India's response was immediate and overwhelming. Within 3 hours, 11 Pakistani air bases were struck. Noor Khan, Rafiki, Murid, Sukur, Sialkot, Pasrur, Chunian, Sargodha, Skardu, Bhulari and Jacobabad as well. Runways cratered, hangars destroyed at Bhulari, An AVAC surveillance aircraft destroyed in its hangar moments after it had just rolled in. At Jacobabad, multiple airplanes destroyed on the ground. For the first time since 1971, India had struck deep inside Pakistan's Punjab. For the first time ever, a nuclear-armed nation's air force infrastructure lay burning. Along the line of control, the Indian Army answered every shell with fire of its own. Between May 7th and May 10th, the Indian Army eliminated 35 to 40 Pakistani army personnel along the LOC, soldiers who had been enabling cross-border fire. In the skies, what unfolded over 3 days was the largest aerial engagement the subcontinent had seen in decades. More than 114 aircraft, 72 from the IAF, 42 from the Pakistan Air Forces were simultaneously engaged in beyond visual range combat, neither side crossing the border, trading missiles at distances exceeding 100 kilometers. The third front was one Pakistan never wanted to open and wisely did not. Within 96 hours of the Pahalgam attack on April 22nd, the Indian Navy deployed its full carrier battle group to the northern Arabian Sea. Surface warships, submarines, maritime patrol aircraft, and carrier-based aviation assets all in position of Pakistan's coast. Operation Sindoor's message was clear. To Karachi, it was unambiguous. The Indian Navy maintained its seamless maritime domain awareness throughout, fully aware of the location and movement of every Pakistani naval unit at all times. Pakistan's Navy never left the port. Not a single vessel ventured into open waters. India was, in the words of Navy chief, minutes away from striking from the open seas. The option was never exercised because it was never needed to be. 3 services, 1 seamless operation, Army, Air Force, Navy, each domain covered, each message delivered. Over 5 days, India established complete military dominance confirmed by post-damage assessment, high-resolution satellite imagery, UAV footage and ground-level verification released in the weeks that followed. At least 5 Pakistani jets were destroyed along with air defense system, command and control centers and key airfield. As the Director General of Military Operations, Lieutenant General Ghai said at the briefing, with the calm of a man who had just overseen history, I am not so concerned about what Pakistan will do, I am concerned about what we will do. We have a roadmap and a plan and we will follow it to the end. In 88 hours, India had done what no country in South Asia had dared to do in the nuclear era. Strike the military infrastructure of a nuclear-armed state and walk away having achieved each and every objective. But the significance of Operation Sindoor was never just military, it was doctrinal. It rewrote the rules. And coming up, how India's political military leadership defined a new national security doctrine and why the 3 pillars announced by Prime Minister Modi on the night of May 12th may be the most consequential policy shift in India's security posture since 1998. At 5 p.m. on May 10th, Pakistan's DGMO called his Indian counterpart. His plea was simple: stop. India agreed, having already achieved each and every objective it had set. As Prime Minister Modi would later tell in Parliament, no foreign leader had asked India to stop.
दुनिया के किसी भी नेता ने भारत के ऑपरेशन रोकने के लिए नहीं कहा। और जब इतना कड़ा प्रहार हुआ, पाकिस्तान ने कभी सोचा तक नहीं था, तब जाकर के पाकिस्तान ने फोन करके डीजीएमओ के सामने फोन करके गुहार लगाई, बस करो, बहुत मारा, अब ज्यादा मार झेलने की ताकत नहीं है.
The ceasefire was Pakistan's request. India's acceptance was a choice, not a concession. 3 days later, on the night of 12th May, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed the nation. What he announced was not just a recap of military operation, it was the new national security doctrine. 3 pillars that would define India's posture for a generation.
22 अप्रैल को पहलगाम में आतंकवादियों ने जो बर्बरता दिखाई थी, उसने देश और दुनिया को झकझोर दिया था. छुट्टियां मना रहे निर्दोष मासूम नागरिकों को धर्म पुष्कर उनके परिवार के सामने, उनके बच्चों के सामने बेरहमी से मार डालना, यह आतंक का बहुत विभत्स चेहरा था, क्रूरता थी। ये देश के सद्भाव को तोड़ने की घिनौनी कोशिश भी थी। मेरे लिए व्यक्तिगत रूप से ये पीड़ा बहुत बड़ी थी। इस आतंकी हमले के बाद सारा राष्ट्र, हर नागरिक, हर समाज, हर वर्ग, हर राजनीतिक दल एक स्वर में आतंक के खिलाफ कड़ी कार्रवाई के लिए उठ खड़ा हुआ। हमने आतंकवादियों को मिट्टी में मिलाने के लिए भारत की सेनाओं को पूरी छूट दे दी और आज हर आतंकी, आतंक का हर संगठन जान चुका है कि हमारी बहनों बेटियों के माथे से सिंदूर हटाने का अंजाम क्या होता है।
10 मई की सुबह जब भारतीय वायुसेना ने पाकिस्तान की मल्टीपल एयरफील्ड्स पर करारा प्रहार किया तो पाकिस्तान ने हार मानी और हॉस्टिलिटी रोकने की उन्होंने पेशकश की। यह पेशकश इस कैविएट के साथ स्वीकार की गई हम लोगों के द्वारा कि यह ऑपरेशन केवल पाज किया गया है, स्थगित किया गया है। अगर पाकिस्तान की ओर से भविष्य में कोई भी मिस एडवेंचर हुआ तो यह ऑपरेशन, अध्यक्ष महोदय, मैं सदन को आश्वस्त करना चाहता हूं, दोबारा प्रारंभ होगा।
The policy shift went beyond the Prime Minister's word. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said that any terror attack on the Indian soil would be treated as an act of war. Not a law and order problem, not a cross-border incident, but an act of war requiring a military response.
भारत आतंकवाद के खिलाफ जब भी कोई कार्रवाई करेगा तो आतंकवादियों और उनके आकाओं के लिए सरहद पार की जमीन भी सुरक्षित नहीं रहेगी।
He also made a statement that would have been unthinkable from an Indian minister even a year earlier, that Pakistan's nuclear weapons should be placed under international supervision, given what he called Islamabad's irresponsible use of nuclear signaling during the conflict. For decades, analysts had argued that Pakistan's nuclear deterrent had effectively neutralized India's conventional military advantage, that India could never strike deep into Pakistan without risking a nuclear escalation. Operation Sindoor tested that argument, and the argument did not hold. 3 pillars, one message. For decades, Pakistan believed that its nuclear arsenal was a shield behind which its proxies would bleed India without consequences. Operation Sindoor dismantled that belief. India struck, India achieved its objectives, India stopped on its own terms, and then told the world this is now a permanent policy. The question the subcontinent is asking today, a year later, has Pakistan changed? The answer from every intelligence assessment is a clear no, which is exactly why India's new doctrine and India's armed forces remain always on alert. Operation Sindoor is not over. Justice, when it came, was quiet. On 29th July 2025, 3 months after Pahalgam terror attack, Indian security forces tracked the last of the 3 Basaran attackers into the Dachigam forest near Srinagar. They were eliminated, their weapons, the M4 carbines used to murder 26 innocents, recovered. The operation that began the moment the first shot was fired in Pahalgam was complete. On the banks of the Lidar River in Pahalgam today, a black marble memorial stands. 26 names inscribed in stone. A reminder that what India did was not about aggression, it was about accountability. 1 year later, Pahalgam is healing, tourists are returning. Kashmir's tourism, which Pakistan hoped to destroy, is breathing again. 1 year later, Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba are fractured. Hafiz Saeed and Masood Azhar have vanished from public life. recruitment has collapsed. Funding channels have dried up. 1 year later, the Indian Armed Forces stand more integrated, more capable, and more battle-tested than any point in the history. And 1 year later, a new India has drawn a new line. Cross it, and India will answer, every time on its own terms.
India will identify, track, and punish every terrorist and their backers.
Operation Sindoor was 88 hours of military action, but what it produced will last for decades. A new doctrine, a new deterrence, a new India that does not wait to be hit again and again before it responds. The 26 men who died in Basaran Valley on April 22nd last year, tourists who had come to see the beauty of Kashmir, did not choose to be part of history. But their deaths and India's response to them have changed the security calculus of the entire region. Their names are on the black marble memorial in Pahalgam, and their memory is carried in the new policy of a nation that finally said enough. I am Akshay Dongre. This is Operation Sindoor. India does not forget.